the brilliant Irish writer Christopher Nolan, who has been compared to such giants as James Joyce, wrote a biography, Under the Eye of the Clock, in which he writes his own story, but he writes it in the third person and gives himself the name Joseph Meehan in order to give himself a certain distance, because this extraordinary writer had an extreme cerebral palsy from the time he was born. He never spoke a word in his life. He had no control over his limbs at all. Okay? He was able to write through the help of a unicorn that was attached to his forehead, his head, and allowed him to pick out the letters on a typewriter if somebody kind of held his head while he was doing it. Okay? And this that I'm going to read now is about the first time and the only time that he really mourned his terrible situation. It occurred when he was still an infant, okay, or close to being an infant. Sensing his heinous horribleness of hope, he cried once only. Nora never gobbled up her son. Sensing how very difficult life was going to be, she spoke resurrecting hope when there was no hope at all. Feeling his frustration, she looked on in silence. Fashioned babyhood was bubbling his broken heart's hollowness. He was only 3 years old, but he cried the tears of a sad man. Creaked now, his tears coursed down his face, but better now, reckoned his mother, than fobbed off for future festering. Sun shone that day long ago in Corclone. Yvonne was gone, that was his sister, to school. Asleep in his blue bed, Joseph looked the picture of pleasant childlike thimble work. Nora serenely simpered as she lifted him. Washed and powdered, he sat on her lap. Fondly she slipped the ginsai over his blond head. His head tilted boldly forward, then suddenly shot backwards. He faced his mother. He gazed his hurt gaze, his lip protruding, eyes busy in conversation. He ordered her to look out the window at the sunshine. He looked hard at her ear, ordering her to listen to the birds singing. Then, jumping on her knees, he again asked her to cock her ear and listen to the village children out at play at the schoolyard. Now he jeered himself. He showed her his arms, his legs, his useless body. Beckoning his tears, he shook his head. Looking at his mother, he blamed her. He damned her. He mouthed his cantankerous, why me? Distracted by his youthful harshness of realization, she tried to distract him. Okay. And then it goes on, and finally she says, I never prayed for you to be born crippled. I wanted you to be full of life, able to run and jump and talk just like Yvonne. But you are you. You are Joseph, not Yvonne. Listen here, Joseph. You can see. You can hear. You can think. You can understand everything you hear. You like your food. You like nice clothes. You are loved by me and Dad. We love you just as you are. Okay. And then it goes on a little bit. And he says, the decision arrived at that day was burnt forever in his mind. He was only 3 years in age, but he was now framing the only spark he saw, his being alive and more immediate his being wanted, just as he was, dread-filled fretting, marked Joseph Meehan's scene that day. But that scene and that day looked out through his eyes for the rest of his life. Comfort came in childlike motions, his clumsy body was his, but molested by mother love, he looked lolling looks at his limbs, and he liked Joseph Meehan. I hope you like what you just heard and will subscribe to my channel.